The digital clock on my bedside table glowed a soft, indifferent green to 17 a.m. Insomnia. An old friend had found its way back into my quiet life, ushering in the familiar hum of the refrigerator and the distant sigh of the wind outside my window. Usually, these early hours were for writing, for diving into the familiar solace of words, and the gentle rhythm of my online journal, Grandma's Journal. But tonight, my fingers hovered over the keyboard, paralyzed by a stack of unassuming envelopes resting beside my mug of chamomile tea. They had arrived earlier that day, a heavy box of them unceremoniously dropped off by the mailman. No sender's address, just a single neatly typed name on the top envelope, to Grandma's Journal. My pen name. A chill that had nothing to do with the cool night air traced its way down my spine. Who in this vast digital world would know my pen name and my physical address? My online persona was a sanctuary, a carefully curated space for my introspective musings, shared with a community that felt like family but existed only in the ether. My heart began to thump a little harder against my ribs. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was more like the tremor of an ancient earthquake rumbling from a fault line I thought had long since healed. Curiosity, a dangerous siren, whispered in my ear. I reached for the top envelope, my fingers trembling slightly. The paper was thick, expensive, with a subtle texture. No casual note, this. I slid my finger under the seal, the soft, tearing sound echoing in the silent room. Inside, a single sheet, folded crisply. My eyes scanned the familiar cursive, a hand I hadn't seen in 16 years, a hand that had once held mine, traced patterns on my back, written love notes on restaurant napkins. A gasp escaped my lips, a fragile, broken sound in the stillness. The first letter wasn't a letter at all, not in the traditional sense. It was a fragment, a whisper, from the past, chillingly specific. Remember that small, dusty bookstore on Elm Street? The one with the leaky roof where you found that first edition of Wuthering Heights. I spent 3 years going there every Saturday, hoping to see you walk through the door just one more time. My breath hitched. Elm Street. The leaky roof. My beloved first edition. How could he know? How could anyone remember such a minute detail from so long ago? The world tilted on its axis. A carousel spun violently after years of stillness. I picked up another envelope, then another, tearing them open with a frantic desperation I hadn't known I possessed. They weren't random. They were a meticulously compiled catalog of my life, a mosaic of my past, written in his hand. Each short missive, sometimes just a sentence or two, was a direct reference to a story, a memory, a preference I had meticulously, intimately shared within the digital pages of Grandma's Journal. The lavender shortbread you always baked for solace. Remember, I tried making it once. It tasted like regret. That small patch of wildflowers by the old lighthouse where you said you felt most free. I visited it every summer for a decade. The wind still hummed your name through the tall grass. The way you'd hum that obscure French melody when you were deep in thought. I've searched every corner of the internet for it just to hear it again. My head was spinning. This wasn't just a blast from the past. This was an excavation of my soul. Every single letter corresponded to a specific entry in my journal, a secret I had poured into the digital void, believing it to be a one-way confession to the universe. He hadn't just stumbled upon Grandma's journal, he had devoured it. He had read every word, every reflection, every quiet joy, and every lingering sorrow. He had traced my footsteps through my own written words, and the sheer volume of them, it was overwhelming. 765 letters. That number flashed in my mind, a staggering testament to 21 years of relentless searching, 21 years of something. It was far more than I'd ever received in my entire life, a physical manifestation of a persistent, quiet obsession. A cold dread began to creep in, chilling the initial shock. This man, the man who had shattered my world into a million pieces, had been watching me, or rather reading me, for years. He knew my current thoughts, my quiet habits, the places that brought me peace. The sanctuary I had built for myself, piece by painful piece, felt suddenly exposed, vulnerable. Was this a genuine attempt at reconciliation, or something more sinister? Could I ever trust him again after the way he left me? Could a heart once so irrevocably broken ever mend enough to let him back in? The question swirled a maelstrom in my quiet, ordered life. The box of letters, a silent testament to a past I had painstakingly buried, now felt like a ticking time bomb in the stillness of my room. I was 35 when he first pulled me from my cocoon. Before him, my world was small, safe, and meticulously arranged. I was an introvert, you see, in the truest sense of the word, not shy necessarily, but deeply reflective, energized by solitude, and utterly drained by excessive social interaction. My comfort zone was my home, my books, my writing, and the quiet rhythm of my own thoughts. Love. It was a concept from novels, a beautiful, terrifying force I wasn't sure I was equipped to handle. My sensitive nature meant I felt everything intensely, and the thought of such vulnerability was daunting. Then he came along. He was charismatic, attentive, and persistent, in a way that for once didn't feel overwhelming. He saw the world I lived in, and instead of trying to change it, he gently, patiently expanded it. He'd find the quietest corners of bustling cafes where we could read our books side by side. He'd plan picnics in secluded parks, just the two of us listening to the birds. He didn't demand I become someone I wasn't. He simply showed me that my quiet self was worthy of grand adventures, even if those adventures were just a few steps outside my familiar door. He was the first person who ever truly saw me, the introverted soul beneath the polite smiles. He remembered my obscure favorite authors, the particular way I liked my tea, the tiny nuances of my moods. He celebrated my small victories, soothed my anxieties, and made me feel safe enough to truly open up for the first time. We fell in love slowly, gently, over 5 years. It was an unfolding, a delicate bloom in the sheltered garden of my heart. I, who had never truly loved before, poured every ounce of my being into him. He was my world, my confidant, the one who understood the silent language of my soul. He was the one who cared for me most deeply, pulling me out of the comfortable solitude of my home, showing me a world I never knew I wanted to explore. But then, ever so subtly, the cracks began to appear. It started small. A forgotten preference here, a mistaken detail about a story I'd told him there. At first I brushed it off. We all make mistakes, right? But the instances grew more frequent. He'd confuse my favorite author with someone else's. He'd forget the specific kind of coffee I preferred. Or worse, recall a detail about a trip I'd never taken, confusing me with an ex-girlfriend or a colleague, I suppose. Each misstep was a tiny chip in the fortress of my trust, a faint discord in the beautiful symphony we had built. My sensitive nature made these slights feel magnified. I didn't voice them much, not at first. My introverted tendencies meant I processed things internally, chewing on them, replaying them, trying to find a logical explanation for the growing detachment I sensed. Maybe he was stressed at work. Maybe I was overthinking. Then came the conversation that sealed our fate. We were 5 years into our relationship, and whispers of marriage were starting to circulate among our friends, gentle prodding from my mother. I loved him deeply. I wanted a future with him, a forever. One evening, as we sat across from each other at our favorite Italian restaurant, I gathered every ounce of courage. So, I started my voice a little shaky. About us, about our future, about marriage. He looked up from his pasta, a distracted flicker in his eyes. Oh, that, Yeah, sure. Someday. He waved a dismissive hand, then his eyes darted past me, fixing on something behind my shoulder. Oh, wait. Look at that Sarah just spilled coffee all over herself. Poor thing, that must sting. He stood up, almost knocking his chair over, and rushed to her side. Sarah, a new colleague who'd just started in his department and who had been getting a lot of his attention lately. He knelt beside her, fussing over her burnt hand, offering his handkerchief. It was a normal kind gesture, but in that moment, after the question I had just dared to ask it, felt like a deliberate, cruel dismissal. He was utterly absorbed in her minor injury, oblivious to the gaping wound he'd just inflicted on my heart. My stomach churned. I watched him, his back to me, completely focused on another woman, while the most important question of my life hung unanswered in the air between us. When he finally came back to the table, still murmuring apologies about Sarah's accident, I spoke quietly but with a newfound steel in my voice. I think we should break up. He paused mid-chew. His eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. Oh, okay. He glanced at his watch. Look, I've got a meeting. Can we talk about this later? I'm really late. He got up, barely giving me a second glance, and practically ran out the door. I knew with an icy certainty that his meeting was with Sarah to continue fussing over her burn, not to discuss the wreckage of our 5 years together. My heart didn't just crack, it shattered. For an introvert like me, forming such a deep bond, allowing someone into the most intimate parts of my being, was a monumental act of trust and vulnerability. And he had treated me with such careless indifference. I spent the next week in a haze, moving through the motions. I packed my belongings one box at a time, each item a silent testament to a love that had withered. He didn't notice. He thought I was just in a sulk, a typical woman being dramatic. He continued his hurried exits, his late-night meetings, oblivious to the fact that I was slowly, meticulously removing myself from his life. A week after I informed him I was leaving, a final straw broke the camel's back, or rather, ignited a fire within me I didn't know I possessed. I was clearing out my desk at the office, ready to hand in my resignation, when I saw it. A gleaming, instantly recognizable Chanel bag on a colleague's desk. It was the bag, the one I had subtly, repeatedly hinted at, the one I had dreamt of, the one he'd promised me for months, saying he was saving up for a special occasion. I walked over, my voice eerily calm. That's a beautiful bag, Brenda. Where did you get it? Brenda beamed. Oh, isn't it our boss gave it to me? Said it was a bonus for my outstanding performance this quarter. Can you believe it? He's so generous. My blood ran cold. Our boss? That was him. The man who had just casually dismissed my offer of marriage, who had forgotten my preferences, who had left me to tend to another woman's minor burn, had given her my dream bag, citing outstanding performance. Performance? Was my 5 years of unwavering love, my deepest vulnerability, not outstanding performance enough? My composure finally snapped. I marched into his office, not bothering to knock. He looked up, startled, his eyes widening as he saw the fury that for an introvert was usually buried so deep it is almost invisible. The Chanel bag, I said, my voice low and trembling, the one you told me you were saving for me. You gave it to Brenda. He stammered, caught off guard. Oh, that. Well, yes. She did have a really great quarter. I was going to get you one later, a better one for our anniversary. You know how much I love you. The lie was as hollow as his words. I knew with every fiber of my being that his heart was no longer truly mine. He no longer saw me, or even cared enough to pretend. I walked out of his office, out of that company, and out of that city within the week. I needed to escape, to run, to heal. I severed all ties, changed my phone number, and found a tiny cottage by the coast miles away from everything and everyone I knew. It was a desperate flight, a self-imposed exile, but it was necessary. My heart was too broken, my trust too shattered to stay. The cottage became my sanctuary. The rhythmic roar of the ocean waves became my lullaby, the vastness of the sky my confessor. I started Grandma's Journal online not as a blog to gain followers, but as a space for myself, a digital diary to process the quiet, profound shifts within me. I wrote about the joy of discovering a new hiking trail, the comfort of a perfectly brewed cup of tea, the peace found in watching a sunset, paint the sky. I wrote about rediscovering my passions, the simple introverted joys that had always sustained me, reading, gardening, knitting. Each entry was a step on my healing journey, a testament to resilience, a quiet assertion of my own worth. I called it Grandma's Journal because it felt like I was sharing my wisdom, my gentle observations with a community of kindred spirits who appreciated the quiet beauty of life. It was a space to be truly me, without pretense, without expectations, without the fear of being misunderstood or dismissed. It was my rebirth. Years passed. The sharp edges of heartbreak softened, replaced by a dull ache that occasionally flared, but rarely incapacitated. I found contentment in my solitude in the meaningful connections I made with my online readers, in the quiet rhythm of my days. I was, for the first time in a very long time, truly at peace. And then the box of letters arrived. As I sat there, the moon casting long shadows across my living room, I continued to pull letters from the box. Each one was a testament to his relentless pursuit. His 765 letters representing 21 years of searching. He hadn't just looked for me. He had sought me out, the true me, the one laid bare in Grandma's journal. I traced every bookstore in every small town for hundreds of miles, hoping to find you. Browsed the dusty shelves. One letter read, I asked about authors you mentioned, hoping someone might recognize your quiet inquiries. I drove past that old lighthouse dozens of times, just to stand where you said you felt free, imagining you there, the wind in your hair. It was a ghost hunt fueled by regret. I learned French just so I could hum that obscure melody you loved, the one you always sang when lost in thought. It felt like the closest I could get to you, to the person I'd lost. When I finally stumbled upon Grandma's journal, a random click, a serendipitous search, I didn't recognize your name, but the words, the stories. They were undeniably yours. Your unique way of seeing the world, your quiet reflections, your love for lavender shortbread. It was like finding a secret map to your soul, and I devoured every single entry. He described his guilt, his agonizing realization of how badly he had messed up. He recounted the empty years without me, the hollowness he felt, the lessons he had learned about what true love, true attention, truly meant. He spoke of growth of self-reflection, of a profound regret that had shaped him, forcing him to confront his own ego and carelessness. I didn't just forget your preferences. I forgot you. I was so caught up in myself, in what I thought was important, that I overlooked the most precious thing in my life. I mistook convenience for connection, and I paid the steepest price. I understand now that an introvert's heart once given is a sacred trust, and I broke that trust. My superficiality, my need for external validation, led me to disregard your quiet depth. I am so sorry. I tried to find you physically in every city you ever mentioned, but you were always one step ahead, or perhaps simply too good at disappearing when you needed to heal. It was only when I stopped looking with my eyes and started listening with my heart through your words that I finally found you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, not after the pain I caused, but I needed you to know. I needed you to know that the man who walked away that day is not the man writing these letters. Life has a way of humbling us, of forcing us to confront our deepest flaws, and my biggest flaw was losing you. I sat amidst the scattered envelopes, the weight of his words pressing down on me. The raw honesty in his letters, the depth of his understanding of my introverted nature, the profound regret that seeped from every line. It was overwhelming. This wasn't the careless man who'd dismissed me for a coffee spill. This was someone who had truly changed, someone who had spent years searching, yearning, understanding. He hadn't just sent me letters. He had sent me a piece of his transformed soul. My initial dread had slowly, miraculously transformed into a dizzying mixture of emotions. There was the familiar protective barrier I had built around my heart, the instinct to guard against further pain. But beneath it, a tiny, fragile seed of hope began to sprout. Could this truly be him? Could he have truly understood the magnitude of his past actions? He still loved me. After all these years, after all the silence, after all the healing, he still loved me. And in the quiet solitude of my living room, with the moonlight streaming through the window and hundreds of his letters scattered around me, I had to admit a part of my heart, the part I thought was irrevocably broken, felt a surprising, undeniable surge of happiness. The question now wasn't whether he had changed, but whether I had changed enough to believe in a second chance. Could the introverted girl who had built a fortress around her heart dare to open it again? Could the pain of the past truly be overshadowed by the promise of a future rewritten by 7,165 heartfelt letters? My journey of self-discovery had been long and hard-won. Was I ready to share it or risk it with the man who had once shattered it all? The night stretched before me, filled with the ghosts of the past and the glimmer of an uncertain yet undeniably hopeful future.